won at a disadvantage and not expected to win. That is how the dictionary defines an underdog. And I'm going to talk about why it can be good to be the underdog. After a corporate career of 17 years in banking, I gave up my cushy job and founded a startup in the kid space with no prior experience in the domain or of building a business. You can see why this topic is of interest to me. To be the underdog implies that you're theoretically not positioned to succeed, and set aside what theory says or what other people think. Being the underdog feels miserable. As humans, we yearn for fulfillment, and that means different things to different people. But the paths to these different destinations are intertwined and overlap. And here is where somehow we find ourselves pitted against others. And winning this competition requires resources. The resources could be material, money and things that come from it, or a privilege more subtle, for example, network. So what do you do then when you do not have all of what you need and it's so much more tough to come out on top? Well, you try harder. And that's perhaps one of the biggest advantages of the disadvantage of being an underdog. When we feel it's hard, we try harder. We give it more of us because we have less of else. Malcolm Gladwell, in his book David and Goliath, shares interesting findings from a study conducted at Princeton University using the cognitive reflection test or CRT. When students were given the test the normal way, they averaged a score of 1.91. Later, the questions were printed out in a difficult-to-read font. And guess what happened? The scores went up. The difficulty in reading the questions made the students pay greater attention and think harder. When we work harder, we effectively use tools in our control. For one, creativity. When constrained with limited resources, we show ingenuity and come up with unconventional strategies to make the most of what we have. Apple, Netflix, Indigo Airlines, they've scripted some of the most remarkable innovations and innovative ways of doing business. Nancy Tyagi made her way from a small town to the red carpet by stitching her own wardrobe. Underdogs are good for the society. Another advantage with the underdog is the support or at times sympathy they receive. The notion of someone without privilege, battling the odds, braving powerful adversaries, always enchants us. We're undoubtedly moved by such stories and we root for these heroes. For instance, Rocky Balboa, Rohit Sharma. And this can be immensely motivating to the underdog, adding to the intrinsic motivation they already have. A famous saying goes, "What would you do if you were not afraid?" In the underdog context, it is often, "What would you do if you were afraid?" Driving the underdog is hunger for something bigger, better, higher, or breaking free to a new life. And that can be incredibly powerful. The kinds that explain the uncanny strength that shows up in the battered hero who rises from the near dead to come back and deliver that final fatal blow to a more powerful villain. The underdog, therefore, is not merely someone at a disadvantage, but someone who is still in the fight in spite of it. Coming back, my status as an underdog isn't new. I grew up seeing financial hardship, but I now know that it was an essential building block of the grit to overcome that hardship. And that awareness also makes me deeply conscious that these hardships don't apply to my 8-year-old, thankfully. But there is the absence of a certain friction that polishes the diamond. We know of several billionaires who've pledged most of their wealth to charity so that their children have the impetus to strive. Now, that leaves the average parent in a quandary. The very limitations that goaded us to work hard, build a life, are now what we lament as the necessary character builders in our children. Don't get me wrong, I'd rather have the wealth and give it away than not have it at all. But in an age of increasing comfort and instant gratification, how do we imbibe growth mindset in our children? How do we inspire them to prioritize effort over ability and nurture the grit to persevere? I don't have the answer, but I have an idea. move out of the comfort zone. Completing a decade and a half in banking coincided with my child starting formal school. I strongly considered working part-time to slow down, focus on his growing needs, and generally catch up with life. And then I started up. I now work 7 days with passion and make time for my child. The absence of an assured paycheck and finding myself a fresher in entrepreneurship, I'm discovering resilience in me I never knew I had. In the context of children, this could mean spending time on something they do not seem to be good at. As parents, we tend to focus on nurturing what we believe we have a knack for. But exposing them to a new domain that requires them to stretch, to endure, helps them tackle the unknown and the uncomfortable. So here it goes. If you'd like to harness the strength of the underdog, change your arena. And with this, I hope that you can summon your inner David even when you are Goliath. Thank you.